Hello everyone, this is Mini Ninja speaking. For today's episode, we're going to be looking at the Kong Studios Custom Vegeta, that's with a B, combo pack, which includes both the main Vegeta Blue figure, which is going to be the bulk of this review, as well as the accompanying Super Saiyan / Majin Vegeta headset that can also be purchased either separately or as part of the pack, depending on who you're getting this from. As we take a quick look at the inside of the packaging here, it's worth noting that this is Kong Studios' first full-fledged attempt at a figure for the most part, knowing that they've mostly done head sculpts up to this point for various figures. And I'm going to have to warn you, this is going to be a trend for what things I'm going to be saying during the course of this particular video. First off, measurement-wise, figure stands just below 6 inches. And just to go back to what I was saying, yeah, no, this is definitely a first shot at a full-fledged figure because, wow, did I run into a bunch of different quality control issues overall. In terms of the upper body, which you might notice has 3 different skin colors by the way, the upper body and upper torso in particular has been casted incorrectly. What that means is that the thing is warped to the point that I can't use any of my butterfly joints whatsoever. They are actually physically stuck in the body because the openings are too small for them to move. Which means that I have lost quite a bit of articulation range on that particular part of the figure. Now for the legs are, in terms of functionality, actually quite good, but as you notice, there is a lot of cleanup issues going on here and there with the legs, and in the feet in particular, and that's because the figure's legs have apparently been quite painted, which, as you can look at the hip joints here, becomes a little more apparent with all the paint scratchiness and the roughness around them. Same with the knees for this part. They're functional, but clearly this was not their original casting color, so we have some issues. For the arms, aside from the butterfly joints that I can't move, they're entirely serviceable, although the wrists are a little on the thick side, although I can kind of guess why. But that doesn't mean that even though these things are the base plastic color, that they don't have their own issues. Here there's another big cut or gash from a casting issue right there beneath the left shoulder bit there. And that makes the 3 different colors of the skin tone that much more apparent. So, unfortunately, yeah, even from just a cursory look, your mileage may vary because of the reviews I've seen so far. They all have a bunch of varying issues, but the problem is they all have issues, and there are some that are definitely more reoccurring than others. So, yeah, I would definitely be suggesting to be very wary in terms of how these things get moved. We're going to slow down a second and take a look at the battle damaged legs, which is kind of one of the big selling points of this as an alternate look, in case you wanted a really beat up looking Vegeta. And, well, presentation wise, as you have it in hand, it looks really great, but once you start looking at the joints, unfortunately I have to say we have the exact same paint rubbing issues going on as a whole on both the hip joints as well as the knee joints once you start getting that really moving. Which is really sad because I'm actually really liking this leg sculpt on here, and I think once I get these things changed, that will be how I'm going to present the figure with this particular set of legs on there. As you can see, there's no movement issues whatsoever. It moves just as fine as the regular set there, although it's worth noting I'm a little concerned about the ball joint on a hinge on that upper figure, which, as far as I tell on the main line figures, you don't have that on a hinge for a reason. Namely, it makes it harder to change and switch them in and out if that thing starts moving on you. It's normally a stiff, straight joint. We'll have to see how that plays out later. Now, for those that prefer a more standard look for Vegeta rather than the bare-fisted one, they do offer an alternate set of forearms to go with the figure, in which in fact most of the hands with this particular toy are meant for this particular look. That being said, be very careful when you're making the switch between one to the other, as unfortunately it seems that the elbow joints have sort of fitting issues, once again, and it seems that if you're trying to move this in and out, you need to really make sure you're pulling it out straight, otherwise you risk damaging the joint on one or both, and possibly getting it stuck inside the body. So just be very careful when you're making that switch. In my case, the figure really wasn't budging at all, so I'm sorry, can't show that in this particular review. Moving on to the head itself, well, frankly speaking, it is actually just a modified version of the Majin Vegeta head, only with, in this case, a much more stylized SS Blue Evo look, especially with the paint job, which is actually quite nice, has a little gradient in it, and actually adds a little bit of a missing middle spike that has been absent in most of the earlier figures of this particular era. But that being said, in terms of the actual facial details, they are noticeably softer than what the original figure had, and in terms of the eye decals, while they're very close approximations, they're not quite a good match or a perfect match for the original figures. And this little bit of footage you're seeing me at the end here is just noting that, once again, stop me, heard this before, fitting issues. Namely, the faces are actually very hard to switch around in my case. First one is very hard to pull off, and it's actually a bit troublesome to get the other faces to go on there. They're not exactly perfect fits, or you have to fit them literally just right, otherwise they won't go on at all. And it popped right off the actual head joint fairly easily. It's actually a bit of a loose fit, if anything. So yeah, you just need to be very careful when making the switches, I find. Or maybe it's just ongoing quality control issues on my particular toy. Could be either one. And in case you thought I was joking about this being heavily based on the Majin Vegeta figure, well, dramatic representation for you. While the pegs are a bit short in terms of the facial plates, they will fit on the blue head just fine. A little work, I should say. And in terms of the alternate, it actually fits on with no issue whatsoever. Which actually will help kind of fix the missing bit of the sculpt in there. Maybe more useful for the Majin Vegeta heads. And in terms of the arms, well, they are absolutely based on the Majin Vegeta ones, just recasted, but with loss of detail because they are recasted, which is always a bit of a lossy effort. So yeah, no questions whatsoever that this is definitely borrowed, and same with the forearms. The gloved hands in this case uses the exact same sculpt. While I give you don't have to reinvent the wheel, it's just readily apparent that yeah, it's the same thing on there, only with slight loss of detail because of it being recasted. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this particular combo set also came with the alternate Super Saiyan Vegeta / Majin Vegeta headset, which is the more standard yellow look. As you can see here, it matches very well with the original Majin Vegeta head look, meaning that it has a very close match to the color of yellow that they use in there, as well as a little bit of an orange shading, so frankly, it's actually a very nice match. I actually rather like that. What I'm not so fond of is that the face plates themselves seem to have the exact same fitting issues here as I had with the SS Blue Evo look on the main figure itself. I'm kind of inclined to believe that might just be an issue that they have with the sculpt in general. Either that, or I just had a lot of misfortune and just got the ones with various casting fitting issues. Who knows at this point? If you happen to have a copy that has the same issues, tell me in the comments. Going back to the figure heads themselves, we do have a bit of odd choices in terms of the faceplates, namely that you have two of them split between Majin Vegeta and regular Vegeta. As you saw, that first one was a smirking look, which was a Majin Vegeta head. However, for the more standard straight looking one, which we'll get back on camera here, that's regular Vegeta for some reason. Which is odd that rather than dedicated, it's like you have one look or the other, they're mixing in both in there for reasons unknown. In terms of decal, they're at least as good as the regular SS Blue Evo look on the main figure, if not a slight bit better, depending on how you want to look at it. Maybe I had just slightly nicer faces on this one. This third one is actually the sideways glance, which is missing from basically all normal Majin Vegeta North American releases, and even missing from a bunch of Japanese ones. In case you are missing that, this is one way to kind of get that face. For the last included head on this particular set is the pupilless yelling face, which I know they had it for the blue look as well. It just feels weird without the pupils. I would have kind of preferred more of a standard eye look. And speaking of general look, here's what it looks like with the alternate head on there, the different set of skin colored hands on glove ones, as well as the battle damage pants. Unfortunately, I have to report that all three of the items I just mentioned have some sort of fitting issue, namely the head is indeed loose on the ball peg, as you might have seen there. The hands for actually the entire figure, every set of hands had to be modified with a 2.5mm drill bit, because it was too tight, and the legs, well, funny story about the legs there. I quite literally hurt myself trying to reassemble this figure, as a bit of a slip when trying to reassemble the battle damage legs onto this thing. Had that ball joint on head slip enough, and had a piece of that sharp, hard plastic shirt slip underneath a thumbnail. That stung a little bit. So no folks, I will not be recommending this particular toy for purchase at your own personal collection. Hopefully they have better luck with the Whis Goku, but they really need to get that whole quality control issue in check, because if this is any example of what they're offering, I don't think they're going to get too many other chances, because this thing was just half-baked out the oven. Thanks for watching, catch you all later.